1944. On the continent of Europe, the battlefronts are clearly marked. But behind the battlefronts, there is another war. An underground army of patriots strike at the Germans through sabotage and assassination. To conquered Europe, 200 broadcasts a day in 36 languages go out at 20-second intervals. When the Germans confiscate radios, the RAF drops new shortwave units. A Belgian broadcaster suggests that people write the letter V for victory to defy the Germans. Before long, the letter is translated to a sound. V becomes the great battle signal. Tapped on tables, pounded on auto horns, hammered by carpenters, coughed in restaurants, whistled at night, tapped by walking sticks during the blackouts. Is there a way to channel this energy of the occupied peoples?
Do not despair, brave Norwegians. Your land shall be cleansed. Be sure of yourselves, Czechs. Your independence shall be restored. Poles, the heroism of your people standing up to cruel oppressors shall not be forgotten. Your country shall live again. Lift up your heads, gallant Frenchmen, stout-hearted Dutch, Belgians, Luxembourgers, tormented, mishandled, shamefully cast away people of Yugoslavia, glorious Greece, yield not an inch. Help is coming. Mighty forces are arming in your behalf. Have faith, have hope. Deliverance is sure.
This is Baker Street, London, well known to Sherlock Holmes fans. And this is 64 Baker Street, nerve center of an organization which stretches all over occupied Europe. It is known officially as Special Operations Executive, or more intimately, as the Firm. It is the present-day equivalent of the Scarlet Pimpernel and his band. Its task is A, secretly to arm patriots in every occupied country. B, to recruit and train a giant underground army, a force which will wait to throw itself at the throat of the enemy by the order of the Allied High Command. At the head of this organization was Lord Dalton.
I shall never forget May 1940, and that great crisis of the war, when Winston Churchill was forming his great war administration. And he did me the great honor of inviting me to be his Minister of Economic Warfare. And then he said to me, and I want you to do something else as well. I want you to be responsible for ungentlemanly warfare, for using all means, secret and underground means against the enemy to break his will to resist. Then he took me by the hand and he said, now go, he said, and set Europe ablaze.
Set Europe ablaze.
We were told by Mr. Churchill that we had to set France ablaze. In fact, I had a message from him on one occasion. What are you doing to stir the torpid Frenchmen? Reply, not more than 1 page by tonight. Well, we did stir the torpid Frenchmen, not that they were very torpid. They were extremely active, and our difficulty was really more to restrain them than to encourage them to violent action.
Anyone had been connected from the American side with clandestine operations, I think naturally feels heavily indebted to the tremendous interest which Mr. Churchill, in spite of his many other preoccupations, took in these sort of operations. It's almost impossible to imagine today the closeness with which these clandestine activities were meshed between the various countries involved.
There has sprung up from the soil a hatred of the German name, and a contempt for the Nazi creed which the passage of hundreds of years will not efface from human memory. Hitler, this evil man, this monstrous abortion of hatred, if he has his way, will reduce all Europe to one unified Boschland to be exploited, pillaged, and bullied. We seek to beat the life and soul out of Hitler and Hitlerism. That alone, that all the time, that to the end. Every week, his firing parties are busy in a dozen lands. Monday, he shoots Dutchmen. Tuesday, Norwegians. Wednesday, French or Belgians stand against the wall. Thursday, it is the Czechs who must suffer and fill his repulsive bill of executions. Now to a fierce and somber tale. Yugoslavia. Since Hitler's invasion and conquest, it has been the scene of fearful events.
Churchill's personal envoy to the mysterious Tito was Fitzroy MacLean.
Mr. Churchill, for his part, maintained a lively interest in the partisans. I would come myself, he telegraphed to Tito, but I am too old and too heavy to jump out on a parachute. The war that they waged was a strange one, but an extremely effective one. They would attack the enemy where he least expected it, and then fade back into the forests and mountains where he couldn't get at them, and then come out and hit him again.
A wild and furious war for existence against the Germans broke into flame among the partisans. The Germans pursued a policy of murderous blackmail. They retaliated for guerrilla activities by shooting batches of 400 or 500 selected people in Belgrade.
In 1942, when the Battle of El Alamein was being planned, our intelligence people had calculated that some 3/4 of the German supplies to North Africa were traveling down one single railway line through Greece. A party of parachutists was formed to land in Greece, join up with the Greek guerrillas, and attack one of the big bridges on this railway line. I was chosen as second in command of this party because I knew Greece well and I spoke Greek. We marched across Greece as fast as we could go, and on the night of the 25th of November 1942, we attacked the big railway viaduct over the river Gorgopotamus. For 2 hours, we fought against the Italian garrison. We had about 150 men, they about 120. Finally, as it was getting near to daylight, we had to send in our team of engineers who were going to blow up the bridge while the bridge was still under fire. They worked for half an hour on the supports of the bridge while the shooting was still going on all round them. And finally, at about 4 o'clock in the morning, they fired the fuses and the bridge went up sky high. It took 6 weeks for the Germans to rebuild the bridge. And even when they had rebuilt it, it collapsed again because the Greek laborers who'd been working on it for the Germans sabotaged it while they were rebuilding it.
There were times when reports from occupied countries reached England in unorthodox ways. Some of the bombs dropped on London did not explode. They contained only sand, and sometimes a message: long live liberty. They had been produced at the great Skoda armament works in Czechoslovakia. Under the eyes of their Nazi oppressors, the Czech workers risked their lives to speak to the free world. Hitler has his own way of quelling such insubordination. He sends Reinhard Heydrich to Prague. Heydrich is a man Hitler can trust. He has already crushed resistance in Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam, and Oslo. On the night of December 28th, 2 members of the Czech section of the firm are dropped into a field east of Pilsen. They are here to kill Heydrich. Shortly after 10 a.m. on May 27th, Heydrich leaves his home in the Chateau Panensky and speeds as usual to his office in Prague. The members of the firm meet him at the village of Brezany. The mission is accomplished, but Nazi retribution is swift and brutal. The village of Lidice is razed to the ground. Every one of its 1,200 inhabitants is murdered. General Eisenhower estimated that the activities of the brave resistance movement shortened the war by 9 months. Of all the occupied countries in Europe, France is strategically the most important to the Allies. Fearful of uprisings, the Nazis keep a watchful check throughout France. In the underground, the Patriots patiently wait their chance to strike openly at the Germans. Churchill broadcasts this message to them.
Presently, you will be able to wait the arm that strikes for you. Our whole people have vowed themselves to cleansing Europe and saving the world from the new dark ages. Frenchmen may see their way from time to time to useful action. I will not go into details. Hostile ears are listening.
Inside France, resistance activity grows. The scattered bands of patriots finally grow into a vast army, able to fight in the open when the Allies land in Normandy and the south of France. fighting their way through to Paris and the West, the Polish underground is waiting to rise on the Eastern Front. The Poles have the largest underground army in Europe. As the Russians advance to the outskirts of Warsaw, the signal is flashed to General Komarovsky.
At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, on the 1st of August 1944, we started with our fight to liberate Warsaw by our own forces.
On August 4th, the Germans started to attack the uprising from strong points which they held throughout the city and suburbs. The Polish government in London told us of the agonizing urgency of sending in supplies by air. I accordingly telegraphed to Stalin. The Polish revolt against the Germans is in fierce struggle. They appeal for Russian aid. The Soviet radio was silent. They wished to have the non-communist Poles destroyed to the full.
American fortresses were ready in Great Britain to come with ammunition and weapon supply for Warsaw. The Russians, however, refused to allow to the Western plains to land on their airfields for refuel.
We were dealing with men in the Kremlin who were governed by calculation and not by emotion. They did not mean to let the spirit of Poland rise again at Warsaw. House by house, the Germans proceeded with their liquidation. A fearful fate befell the population. General Bohr's appeals to the Soviet commander were unanswered.
After 63 days of fighting, when all food and ammunition had gone, I was forced to give an order to capitulate.
One of the last broadcasts from the heroic city was picked up in London. May God, who is just, pass judgment on the terrible injustice suffered by the Polish nation. Life is a test, and this world is a place of trial. Human beings and human societies are not structures that are built or machines that are forged. They are plants that grow and must be tended as such. The supreme question is how we live and grow and bloom and die.